let's talk about the mix window. First thing I'm noticing is that my mix window is in narrow mix view. So I'm going to go to the view menu and I'm going to take myself out of narrow mix. In the mix window, I'm looking at channel strips or mixer strips. And within these strips, I can see certain signal routing controls. I see my inserts. Inserts are where I can load plugins. And I can run my plugins using the real-time processing of my computer. And I'm noticing in my inserts the way that my plugins are organized. When you open up Pro Tools and look in here from default, you are not going to see your plugins appear that way. So I'm going to go to the Setup menu and I'm going to go to Preferences. These are what are referred to as the global preferences of Pro Tools. That means that any settings that I adjust in these preferences, these will apply to any Pro Tools session that I open. It's not going to be particular to this Pro Tools session. So I'm here in the Display tab, and you'll see this item, Organize Plugin Menus By, and I've got this set to Category and Manufacturer. So yours, by default, will be set to Category. So when you look, you'll see this. But it can be much nicer to be able to look by category and by manufacturer. So let's go ahead and set that back. Here, Organize Plugin Menus By Category and Manufacturer. Now when I look in my inserts, I can see by category and by manufacturer. So as you start to build up your collection of AAX plugins, you'll start to see more names appear in your by manufacturer list. It can be much more convenient to navigate the plugins this way. So I get 10 inserts per channel. Down here on the lower left, right here, if I click this, this shows me all the options that I can view in the mix window. So I can uncheck, say, inserts A through E and sends A through E, and then close this list. Now you look back in this signal routing controls here, and I'm seeing less of my controls. Of course, I could go back into that list and click the options. The other thing I can do is I can right-click on a name, and then I can go back in and reselect those controls that I want to see. So again, I get 10 inserts per channel on channels that allow for inserts. I also get 10 sends. So what I can use sends for is I can take a send, and using a bus, which is a pathway for audio, I can use a send to route over into an auxiliary track where I would load a reverb or a delay or something like that. So 10 inserts per channel and 10 sends per channel on channels that allow inserts and or sends. Also, I have my I/O controls for my tracks. So if I'm recording into an audio track, I would set the input to that track. All of my tracks are routed to the stereo mix output of my interface, so they're all routing to the track output of monitor left, right. We have a MIDI track in the session. This is interesting because on MIDI tracks, this input and output, they have nothing to do with audio. That is just routing the MIDI signal into the track and then routing the MIDI signal out of the track over to some type of virtual instrument, or it could be an external MIDI rack piece or something like that. So this area here that we've been talking about, these are our signal routing controls. Now, in this area here, these are more what we refer to as our record and playback controls. So we've got panners, we've got a track input monitor. When we use this track input monitor, and we'll get into this later on, but for now, when we use the track input monitor, what that allows us to do is that no matter what state Pro Tools is in, if Pro Tools is at a standstill, if Pro Tools is playing back, if I'm recording in Pro Tools, I can always hear the signal that's showing up at that input. I've got my record enable controls, my solo, my mute, and then of course my volume fader too. So just getting a basic understanding of what these record and playback controls are in the mix window. Now, real quick, let's do our command equals, and we'll go back to the edit window And we'll see some of these similar features show up in the edit window. So again, I get my inserts, my sends. I'm not seeing the inserts and sends or the other controls that I want to see. So over here on the left, I can come in here and check these boxes. Or again, I can right click and then select the options that I want to be able to view in the edit window. Also, I've got volume. I can adjust volume in the edit window. I can manipulate pan in the edit window. And then over here, this is the track header. So I've got my track nameplate here. And of course, as I'm working through a session, I would name my tracks. So if this was a voiceover, I just double click that track nameplate and I would name this track Vox. The reason why we want to name these tracks as we start to create them is because the file names in Pro Tools get their names from the track name. So if I name my track properly and I start recording, then the file that gets created carries the same name as the track name. Some of the other record and playback controls here in the mix window, of course, the record enable button. Again, the track input monitor, solo, mute, open up the track height a little bit. And then in here, we'll be using this quite a bit, but this is what's called our track view selector. So I can move around my track view by using this menu. And then we've got some areas in here for automation, and then also some areas where we can load Elastic Audio as well. Now let's go back to the mix window, Command equals. So we're familiar with all these controls. And then over here on the bottom left is our groups list. Now we also see this groups list over in the edit window. So we can have edit groups or mix groups, or we can have both. We can have a group be both a mix group and an edit group. That's a mixing discussion for further down the road. So as we move along here, and as you start to move through your milestone, you're going to be working much deeper in the edit window, and you're going to be working much more in the mix window. These first few videos here have just been intended to give you, again, a basic overview of the interface, some of the terms that we're using in the software, and then as we move into our milestone videos, these videos will feel much more comfortable and these steps will be much more comfortable because you've got somewhat of an overview going into these milestones. See you in the first milestone video.